thing that is being done on the policy level to ensure that our students are prepared for college and to make sure that it's an opportunity available to all of them. Because I agree, at least for my kids, and I believe for all kids, college, I like how you said it, it should not even just be an expectation, it should be a demand. And states have gone about the process of raising their standards to make sure that the quality of education that is provided to all kids is at a college and career-ready level. Because under No Child Left Behind, when accountability was set up, the goal was for all kids to be proficient. But in order to be proficient, what happened was in a number of places, they dumbed down what it meant to be proficient. So now, most states have adopted the same, not all, but most states have adopted the same Common Core standards, college and career ready standards, so that we're providing the same high level of education to all kids. Now that's about the expectations for what happens in the classroom that's happening at the policy level, at the state level. That does not directly address the attitude that you're describing. And I'm not sure what ways in which policy can address that. I think that we need more parents like you that will take it. And perhaps a policy level would be within our schools of education, that as teachers go through preparation programs, that cultural competence and cultural sensitivity is a more prominent part of teacher education and part of the alignment that we need to see happen between our high schools, our middle schools, our elementary schools, and the higher education system is to make sure that when teachers are being prepared to teach in higher education, that they're both prepared in terms of high quality instruction, but also high quality relationships.
Thank you. Sir, back there.
Philip Barsot, everyone. I'm with Idea Public Schools from South Texas. I'm happy to be in North Carolina today. It's very green. So I have a related question. In the K-12 reform movement, one of the major headlines as we're talking about this morning is that the teacher is the most significant variable to student achievement. My question is this part of the higher ed conversation? I'm wondering, perhaps these inequities do not exist because of students or because of support services. Maybe it's a college teacher, instruction, and professor problem.
Well, I can say that I do think that the conversation is probably not happening as strongly as it should within the higher education community. I know that K-12 colleagues, and I'm sure Philip and Will can speak to this even more, are certainly pressing on higher education institutions. There's a lot of backlash in the higher ed community around trying to measure quality and outcomes and how we do that, and arguing about what are the ways in which we do that. And I think teacher ed is actually at the forefront of that conversation in a lot of ways, because they are being measured in ways, and there are metrics being developed that aren't being applied to other programs. So it's emerging in higher education, but I wouldn't say that the higher ed community has taken up as strongly as the K-12 community has.
Yeah, glad you asked the question. I think it actually relates to a number of questions a number of comments that we've heard, and want to thank Deborah for truly making this conversation, because I think hearing from you all is so critically important. We actually, Department of Ed, had Ed Back to School Day earlier this week, in which we went back into the classroom and got a sense of what teachers are actually doing. And after that, had a conversation about how we do this better. And one of the things we looked at was making sure that as we think about how we evaluate teachers, that we also think about how we're training and supporting teachers when they come into the school system. And so as we talked about teachers in, particularly in communities of color, who teach in schools in communities of color, who are only there for a year or two, and you have consistent turnover, certainly not helpful if we can't, for example, pair them with more skilled teachers, with teachers who may have the kinds of cultural competencies that that we've been talking about. One of the things that we know very well is that the ignorance abatement statement is so true. We simply cannot sufficiently and adequately teach our children if we don't fully know them. And so we're looking for ways to provide a level of support for teachers that would buttress the same kinds of evaluative processes that we're also looking at the national level.
Thank you. We're going to go here. We have 3 minutes left, so I want to be respectful of that. Please know the panelists are here to also follow up. So if you can keep your questions very short, we'll try to get to the 3 who are here. But I apologize. We're, want to be respectful of everybody else's time. So
should I speak in Spanish better? Faster. Hola, my name is Mati Lazo Chatterton from Cary, North Carolina. Thank you for the White House initiative and your fantastic panelists. I'm here as a parent of 2 grown children and an advocate. And I have 2 children. And I learned the cultural and educational system thanks to special education because my son has cognitive disabilities and regular education. My question is, what do you have find out in the research through best practices in the country for people with cognitive disabilities in order to pursue the dream, not only the American dream, the disability dream, like my son David say, in universities. 4 years, my son has a certificate of Wake County Community College, but he wants to pursue now. We have 2 very good programs through the UNC Greensboro here in North Carolina and the Appalachian University. But I'm learning like you were talking about, memorize. I would love to memorize the best practices 4-year college in our country that my children and other children that we are working with can attend, or where we can find those.
yeah, great question. Anybody want to? I would just say that, look, we don't have good research, from my perspective, looking at students with disabilities and serving them well in institutions of higher education. We spend too much effort, and I've been guilty of this in the past, of focusing on traditional students, traditional institutions, traditional pathways. And what you've raised is a critical population that doesn't get the awareness, attention, and resources needed. So I wish I could rattle off a list, but I think we would love to hear about the 2 programs you articulated and how, as policy and researchers, we can perpetuate that to instill a conversation that you asked the question about, but that we don't often discuss.
I'm going to pray so you can have it.
Oh,
for the
okay.
next year.
Perfect. We'll all meet here, and we each have platforms that we can help get that out. Thank you, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, back here and then here.
Hi, my name is Viridiana, and I'm a dreamer. I'm part of an undocumented youth group called the Anti-Dream Team. And my question came to me when the lady in pink said that there's a lot of things that can be addressed at a local level rather than looking at the national level, right? But in the absence of help from local organizations, from state organizations, any grants, any money, for organizations like us who are volunteer-led, is there anything that the White House or at the national level can do for people like us in terms of grants, in terms of any kind of money to trickle down to, us going and doing presentations in like high schools, to spread the word about like what scholarships do exist for undocumented youth, and like to spread the word about getting active and like in their community. So yeah, in the absence of local statewide stuff or groups that help us at the local level, what can you guys bring to the table for people like us?
Does the lady think want to respond? Thank you. Good question.
So I think that certainly other folks here can provide some thoughts as well, but I think when you're part of a community organization, getting connected to various efforts that are going on. There are a lot of cities that are starting to mobilize around college attainment, so looking for champions, within city government is one way to make sure that if there are local resources that they can help bolster. A lot of these cities are trying to find ways to bring in community organizations and do cross-sector partnerships, so I think that that's one way to think about it. There's also a lot of state networks, so college access networks at the state level, the regional level. At the federal level, there are the College Access Challenge grants, which are funneled through the state, but those are things that frequently will flow to local partners, and so that would be one area. And then also, community-based organizations do apply for and receive TRIO grants, which are federally based funds at times for supporting those kinds of programs. They more frequently go to colleges and universities, but there have been some community-based organizations that get those resources as well.
And I would just know that at the national level, United We Dream has a lot of network nationally and others, and MALDEF has a collection of scholarships for students who are undocumented. Often they just are scholarships that don't ask citizenship status at all, rather than overtly being for undocumented. So you have to pay attention to those kinds of things. So that's what I've seen at the national level to complement what she's been talking about. But I think, the sad reality is the onus is on us to find them and to create them, because it's not happening sufficiently at the numbers we need at the national level. So thank you.
I'll be quick, I promise. My name is Justin Clapp. I'm the Director of Access and Outreach for Duke University, and I am also the Pell Grant heckler. My question is actually back to that point in that $8,000 gap. And I'm wondering, and not speaking about Duke or any other institution in particular, what types of institutions are going to be the ones where you see the smallest gap, where students can find the easiest route financially to education?
Sure, thank you for that question. So I think we've seen at a number of four-year institutions make commitments. So right here in North Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill does have a covenant where they seek to cover expenses for students who are low income. To the extent, and I think that they've shown that program has been really successful for the low-income students who are at Chapel Hill. It's not necessarily increased the number of low-income students coming into the institution, so I think there's both a recruitment aspect as well as the support once they're on campus, because students need to know it's really an option for them to actually take advantage of it. So I think that's a piece of it. So we've seen some of those commitments from four-year institutions. Again, when we look at the data nationally on where most four-year institutions spend their institutional aid dollars, it's not on low-income students, because they are incentivized to try to increase selectivity and merit amongst their incoming students. So to the extent that institutions are spending their dollars in the same direction as the Pell Grant, I think that can be the most impactful. Community colleges, the Pell Grant, the Pell Grant can cover tuition at many community colleges, but there's still cost of attendance. And so what we see amongst Latino students in particular are lower levels of borrowing. And so even after loans, they have about $3 to $4 grand that they try to cover through working too much and or stopping out. And so I think we need to be really attentive to what that gap looks like. And the people who are putting together the aid packages know what that gap is when they send those letters to low-income students and students of color. So being really mindful about if you've gapped a student, how are you going to help them get through?
Last comment.
There was a question raised earlier regarding the president's My Brother's Keeper initiative, and didn't want to totally ignore that. Wanted to say that that certainly is something that crosses the span of the pipeline issues that we talked about. I'm certainly available after to talk more about that. And see Marvel Davis in the back is a White House initiative who's also working very heavily with us on that. So
Thank you all. Please help me in thanking our panel. If you want to ask questions, try to be respectful to the next panel, but please take advantage when you can. Thank you all very much. We have
announcement before we turn it over to our moderated panel. This fabulous conversation that we're having with a national and regional perspective is going to be focused in just a few weeks on May 22nd on a discussion specifically around Latino education in North Carolina. The North Carolina Society of Hispanic Professionals is presenting a forum about Latino education in North Carolina with a stellar group of panelists, the State Superintendent June Atkinson, President Tom Ross of the UNC system, President Scott Rawls of the community college system, and President Hope Williams of the North Carolina Independent Colleges and University System. And so we just want to invite you, after this very stimulating day that you will have had this macro level conversation, those of you, the 90% of you who raised your hand from North Carolina, we invite you to come back on May 22nd to have this North Carolina conversation. And the Society for Hispanic Professionals has flyers somewhere, Marco or Rudy. That's Marco right there, board chair. So they have flyers to give you information about that. And lastly, they are opening the floor for folks to submit questions ahead of time so that the panelists can respond to those during the forum. So today is your last day to do that, so see Michael for a flyer about this next step on Latino education in North Carolina. Now I'll turn it over to Nicole.
I went back and forth. And I want to say I'm the first generation on one side, my father's side, to have a high school degree, and on my mother's side to have a college degree. And I say that because I think there's still the story of my completion, persistence, workforce engagement is repeated over and over again. And I'm proud of that, and my resiliency is my badge, and fortunately has been something that has driven me well through. But I wanted to highlight a couple of things. I think Deborah, who is an incredible co-founder of Excelencia, on their work, and if you do not know about Excelencia, please go to their website, because it's so important to see the great reports that they're doing. I use it over and over again, and sometimes I do that, hitting my head, you know, I knew that, but now I have the data to really support that. Does anybody ever have that feeling? Sometimes you report, you go, yeah, I knew that, but you know what, data helps, right? A data-driven environment where we flip the script, where we're asset-based, it makes a difference in creating the narrative around change, right? And that's what we want. But one thing that wasn't mentioned, and I think the piece that, as a professor at Brooklyn College, that I know for the students that I've worked with, and for many that's the City University of New York, open enrollment. I think it's important for folks to know, people go to college for what reason? What reason? What do you think? Why do they go to college? Develop themselves. I love a room of educators. Develop themselves, feel good, cognitive learning, critical thinking. Thank you, get a job. No, I'm not against all those, because obviously I believe in that, the power of transformation. I wouldn't have worked in education and youth development for more than 20 years if I didn't believe in that. But there is an end game, and particularly for Latinos who contribute to a family wage, even as young as 13 years of age, contribute to a family pot to support their families, a job is critical. Do we get that? So I want to give you just some statistics on the argument of why we should be thinking about persistence and completion, and why you have this great group of talented people here. By 2020, 65% of the jobs will require a post-secondary degree. You get that? Not a credential, a post-secondary degree. Okay? Between my father's generation and the students that are going to college now, that is close to a 40% increase in the expectation of those who need a college degree. Right? That's important for us to know. I think the other thing that's pretty significant for us to know too is that the areas where we see the most enormous growth in this demand-driven economy, anybody knows those areas? Yeah, technology, we know those, health, right? Technology broadly across, right? It's where Latinos are least represented, okay, or underrepresented. And I'm putting those out there because there are enormous powers of choice that happen every day on behalf of the Latino student who goes to college. And it doesn't mean we steer them, but we need to understand, and I feel strongly also, speaking as a faculty member, about what is the data out there? What are we saying? What are the directions? What are the opportunities? That's not a gloom and doom scenario, trust me. It's one of opportunity. It's one of talking about how we can be assets, and one about how we can frame a narrative of how supports in areas where we're underrepresented. Well, on this panel today, we get to do a couple of things. We get to talk about what are strategies and tactics for increasing access to persistence, completion, and I would add the second piece, transition to the workforce. And I'd love to hear from folks on this panel about those. But first we're going to get to start with just a brief introduction, 5 minutes each on each one. One last thing before I continue, and I want to say this piece. Though we have not been able to do this in a meaningful way at this session, if anybody is interested in talking particularly about what are alternative certification programs for people who were court involved, which is a significant number of particularly of our Latino men, an increasing number of Latino women, we should talk on the side about that. We could do a separate symposium on that, but I do not want to ignore that population, okay, because I think that's a critical population as well, and that's where I've spent some of my professional career. So with that said, enough on Lisa Nieves and my soapbox. I'm done with that. How's that? I get to jump off of that. I get to introduce, first I'm going to say the names of each of the panelists, and then each of them will take us on a 5-minute journey around thinking about strategies around persistence and access, which would be great. The first is going to be Dr. Alice Ann Bailey. She's Director of Go Alliance for the Southern Regional Education Board. The second is going to be Mauricio Gadbo, Director of Latino Memphis. The third is going to be Dr. Constanza Gomez-Joins, Executive Director and Division Head for the Center for the Global Learner in Durham Technical Community College. Oh, the idea of the Global Learner. Nice. And the last will be Donna Weaver, Spanish Service Manager at North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority. I now turn it over to Dr. Alice Ann Bailey.
Thanks, Lizette. I've been told 5 minutes, so I've asked her also to keep me because, as like all of you, I'm very passionate about this and could go on forever. And I might be preaching to the choir here, but one of the first things I think we really need to keep in mind is that students and their families know that having a higher ed degree will lead to a better quality of life. They know they need it. They know they'll have better access to health care, make more money. We don't need to waste our time spinning our wheels convincing them all of the reasons why they need to go. They know. They have very high aspirations, and I think we really need to keep that in mind. And this is a great thing that we can work off of. We don't need to spend our time trying to convince them of that as well. Sometimes our low-income students have been found to have even higher aspirations than our high-income peers. They're very driven, so we need to keep that in mind. But why don't we see more low-income and underrepresented students graduating high school and going into some form of higher education? One, as we know, there's an information barrier. And we really need to keep in mind, I think, in working with these students, particularly Hispanic and Latino students, is that we need to do a little more research and getting to know them. More focused with research, more individual getting to know the students that you're serving, because they're all coming from very different and complex backgrounds. But the research that I have done with these students shows that we're doing a good job of getting the information out right now. We've seen a large increase in the past 15 years of the number of students who are going on to higher ed. But as you know, they're not completing once they get there. So there's more that we can do. They know the basic steps to getting into college. They kind of know, well, I need to get good grades. I need to take, the SAT, ACT. I need to apply. I need to fill out the FAFSA. Well, what they don't know is what the FAFSA is and why they have to complete it and how. And so my research with these students shows that they are very, very eager for detailed information of how. They want to know the nitty-gritty, of how to accomplish each one of these major steps. So when you ask students why they're not going to college, what I have found is there are two major reasons. One is financial. They tell me that they cannot afford it, so why even apply? Why even graduate from high school? Because I can't afford it, so there's no reason. Or they, as Lizette alluded to, they feel like they need to start earning money right away to support their family. And we need to respect that. I do a training program with those who work with students to counsel them on going to college. And one of the first things that we study is cultural competence, as our last panel talked about. And it's really, really important to understand what those values are in the home and respect those, and then build a plan off of that. The other reason why we hear students aren't going to college is academic. They either feel that they can't get in, or they're not going to succeed when they get there. And that's something that we really need to work with students. Both of these, you can argue, there's a behind it. There is a gap between what the Pell Grant will cover and what the family is able to contribute, so that there's a bit of reality there. And the same with academic. They truly may not be prepared. But I think for a large majority of students, they are academically prepared. They just don't believe it. In Tennessee, and I hate to pick on Tennessee, I see some of my Tennessee friends here. They ask students, are you going to college, yes or no? And if no, why not? 77% of the students said it's because someone at this school advised me against it. So we really need to take a hard look at our administrators, our counselors, and our teachers, how they are trained, and what kind of messages they're giving to their students. And we need to develop students' sense of academic self-efficacy. And then how you combat negative stereotypes. Stereotypes are something that form in students very, very early at a very young age. And unfortunately for our underrepresented students in higher ed, there are a lot of negative stereotypes about their ability. And what happens when there's a cultural negative stereotype about you? You have lower self-efficacy, you have lower motivation, you set lower goals, and you disengage from that area for which there is a negative stereotype about you. So if it's an academic stereotype, you tend to disengage from school. Negative stereotypes also increase anxiety, which can really play a powerful role in performance on things like the SAT, ACT, and it impacts, if you have a high anxiety, it impacts how you learn in the first place and how you're able to perform on assignments in the classroom. So in order to develop better self-efficacy, there are typically 3 main ways. Persuasion, just telling a student, yes, you can do it. Behavioral modeling, which is getting someone like, they have to be like that person. They have to relate to the model. But by showing students someone like you was able to do it, you're much more likely to convince them. And if you haven't heard of Greg Walton, I would encourage you to look at his work. He's at Stanford University, and he's done a lot of work in this area with using upperclassmen to come in and work with first and training students, or just showing them videos of them saying, look, it was hard. My first year of college was really hard, but here's how I was able to do it, and you can too. And that can work to increase their self-efficacy. And the other is first-hand experience, and that's really the most powerful way of increasing self-efficacy, is working with students to show them that they can in small examples. And so in closing, I have a lot more to say. We also need to be better working with our counselors. I heard the first panel talk about the high caseloads. We don't need to write our counselors off and just say, because there's so few of you in the schools, that you're not able to serve our students, and therefore we're going to do all these other things. We need to address a lot of problems with our counseling community, and I think they are going to pass it on.
Thank you so much.
Hi. Buenos días. Mauricio Calvo with Latino Memphis. Is that too loud? Yes, sir. That's good. All right. I want to kind of put things into perspective. How a small nonprofit in Memphis, Tennessee, got into the business of college access. And I think it's an interesting story. For many years, Latino Memphis has been proudly and humbly serving thousands of families access human services. We have dealt with everything from food stamps to human trafficking. And we keep growing, and we keep getting bigger and see more and more people. And I want to point out 2 stories that came out recently that were kind of a wake-up call. So it was good news and bad news. Good news is that the Urban League released a study last month, a couple of months ago, I'm sorry, and it talks how it deals with unemployment and race. And in Memphis, it mentions that 3.8% of Latinos are unemployed, compared to 6.5% of whites. So I would say, I guess the Latino community is doing really well. Everybody has a job. The sad part of the story is, on a different story, the census relieves that 40% of Latinos in Memphis live in the poverty level. And this is like really, 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 really low. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we stop this revolving door? Again, I said earlier, we take our job with our pride and humbleness at the same time, but we have to stop this. And we got an opportunity 3 years ago opportunity to knock on the door, I call it a milagro, where the Tennessee Higher Education Commission called Latino Memphis. They had been invited by the Lumina Foundation to apply, be participants of something called the Latino Student Success Initiative. And this was a multi-year effort to increase the number of Latinos going to college. And they were looking for a local Hispanic partner. And we're like, sure, why not? Yeah, right. We would love to partner with you. And I want to tell you that from that point, our whole organization has changed tremendously. Not only our capacity, but our mission, our focus is just, it has been a swift from an overarching goal that mirrors Lumina's goal of, X number, right now we say significantly increasing the number of Latinos who obtain post-secondary education by the year 2025. So I want to tell you how, even we continue to provide social services and basic services, everything is with that one end in mind. How do we get more Latinos to college? Well, I mean, they need food stamps, and they need social services, and they need these things. They need whatever they need, so the parents can support the students. So that's kind of why we have been working. Okay, great. So in this process, we took a very simple approach. That is, we're working in the ground with 5 high schools. We couldn't work with colleges at the beginning because, quite frankly, there were not that many Latinos in college. But we had an enormous population a growing population of high school, middle school, and elementary school Latinos that were coming into the pipeline. And so we decided that was the way we had to go. How do we work on college access? How do we ensure that these kids who are very self-motivated will get to college? And so that was the one-on-one, and I'll be happy to talk more about it in a minute. But we also look at the partnership, a collaborative that will support this work. Certainly, we couldn't do this work alone, and so we partnered again with Tennessee Higher Education Commission, with the Office of the Mayor, with the Community Foundation, just all kinds of people, everybody looking at this. And from there, we have become somebody at each one of these tables, voicing the voice of Hispanics in the higher ed. We learned a few lessons, a bunch of them. As an immigrant myself, and somebody who went to school in the United States, I thought I knew, but really I knew very little. Because my reality 20 years ago was different than the reality of my clients today. We found, for instance, that students are motivated, and the parents want to have their kids to go to college. They just don't know how. So we had to add a parent component. Now, we kind of knew this from the literature, but it's different when you're in the trenches doing this. Affordability is our number 1 issue, and of course that's connected to policy and other things as well. But most important is the idea that college is a global thing. We are trying to create a culture where college is just something that we do. And somebody here talked about earlier, the support system. I mean, this is something that we have to do on a one-to-one base, one-on-one with individuals, but also students need a support base. They need to know that they're not alone with this thing. So, I'm sure we'll talk more. In Tennessee, I'm just close to say we're this close, and North Carolina was the same way to have an in-state tuition bill, and we're going to continue to push forward in the next legislative session.
I do want to say, hello. It's a blessing and curse being the moderator. Thank you, Alejandra, for asking me to be the one. I scared the panel. Doing everything under 5 minutes. I will give you a signal for that, but thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say also, now it's Dr. Gomez Joyce.
Hola, I am local. I work here at Durham Technical Community College, and I am just so honored that we are hosting this forum. And thank you so much to the White House for choosing us. And I know this means a lot to our Latino students and also for dreamers that are here today to realize and understand firsthand that they have support not only at the local level, but at the national and government level as well. So thank you so much for being here. And I am the Executive Director for the Center for the Global Learner. And the center, commonly known as CGL, is a division that was created in the fall of 2009 by our president, Dr. Ingram, with the objective of centralizing everything having to do with international student services, Latino outreach, and the outreach of other underserved populations, study abroad, international partnerships, globalization, all those initiatives. We house the ESL department. ESL is English as a second language, and it's for mainly English speakers that immigrate to the United States and speak little to no English. We also have the EFL program, English as a foreign language, and the difference is that EFL is academic ESL, if you will. It's for non-native English speakers that want to progress to curriculum programs. So we're attempting to create pathways, ESL, EFL, curriculum. We also host an array of courses in the continuing education department for non-native English speakers that want to improve their English language skills for personal enrichment. And we also house the Spanish translation and interpretation department. And we have several of our students here as volunteers today, okay? So our largest department in the center is ESL, English as a Second Language. In 2013, 2014, we registered 1,367 Hispanics. That's 66% of our ESL student population. In 2012, the ESL department received a grant from the National Center for Family Literacy and the MetLife Foundation for an initiative that we call Parent Academy. We partnered with several of the public school systems in our service area, and we held a series of workshops and invited the immigrants and the political refugees and just international students in general to attend. And we conducted these workshops and we explained some very basic concepts, how the educational system here works from elementary school, middle school, high school, to the community college and beyond. Okay, they were very well attended. Of course, the majority of our participants were Hispanics. We saw 176 parents from 35 different schools. What we learned from these workshops and what we confirmed is how important that personal connection is. How important not just the personal connection with the student, but also with the family. We surveyed the parents to get some information, and 100% of the parents, 100%, said that they really wanted their children to move on to post-high school education. They just don't know how to do it, but 100% want that. That's just a common nature parent, right? You want your children to succeed. We also learned that it was very important to have somebody they could identify with, preferably somebody Latino, or at least have interpreters there, okay? And although that grant was only for a year, we've continued our outreach efforts. In the last 2 years, we have visited several ESL classes in our district high schools. We have attended parent information sessions. We have attended Hispanic summits, conferences, and we have made a very conscious effort to educate not only the students and the parents, but the community at large and the professionals in the high schools, the counselors, about the different educational opportunities available to the students. One particular event that stands out was one that we did for the DPS, Durham Public School district-wide system. In a central location, we invited, and it was for Latinos and Latino students and families, and we invited them to come and learn. And we conducted that information session in Spanish. I conducted it in Spanish, and I explained some very, very basic concepts because you can't assume that they even know that college, if you go full-time, is 4 years. What I noticed is as they were walking in, they were very shy. I dare say almost intimidated looking. They were very shy, almost intimidated. And as the presentation in Spanish progressed, and as I talked to them individually, they started asking questions and more questions and more questions. And by the end, during the question and answer session, they were asking some very difficult questions. And of course, after that presentation, the one-on-one, I saw so many of the parents and students one-on-one, and they were asking some very difficult questions. So that one-on-one connection with the parents, with the families, is very important. We had students from elementary school to high school at that session. And they come back to us, the students that we go and talk to at ESL classes, and I can think of particularly 4 students that came to us to Durham Tech after that event. After that event. But what was really rewarding is that they came to us not just for their students and seeking admissions into the community college, but also that parents found out about the ESL courses. So we enrolled 2 women in ESL courses. One of the other parents enrolled in early childhood. So it's a dual role. We're there to educate the students, but also the families. So in January, we had a meeting Regional Latina Student Success Committee and our Student Success Core team. And we talked about what Durham Tech is doing and next steps. And our strengths is that we have strong support from the leadership of the college. The creation of the center is an example. Our faculty and staff are very committed to supporting and promoting diversity, and I have worked on projects, interdisciplinary and interdepartmental projects, with some very just motivated and brilliant and inspiring faculty members. We have targeted our Latino community, and we're very proud of this, but not content. But we're very proud of the fact that our Latino students persist and graduate at similar rates as the other students. And we're very proud of that. But we're not content because we need to reach out to more Latinos in the community. We have a lot more work to be done. Primarily, we have very few bicultural and bilingual faculty and staff, and this touches upon what somebody else said just a little bit ago. And I could go on and on about everything we still need to do, and I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to talk about it just a little while.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. As my grandmother always said, leave a place wanting to see more, right? And
Yes.
that's the goal of how we're going to be ending these 5 minutes, because there's no way we can tap all of the talent that's in here. I do want to make a plug before we go forward with Donald Weaver, is to say that the White House Initiative also put out a guide to financial aid. And I think it's a great guide. I think it's worth downloading and accessing. As I talked already about excelencias reports, I also want to recognize Hispanics and philanthropy for really wanting to make this happen here as well. They also have access to incredible local providers that they have funded that are doing meaningful work on behalf of Latinos. With that said, now I go to Dr. Weaver.
Thank you very much. It is truly an honor to be on this panel today and to be here among friends. For the last 10 years, I've worked sort of boots on the ground here in North Carolina. Yesterday was a typical day. I had a 7-hour car ride, and so I had a lot of time to think about the questions that I was given to frame the discussion today. And the questions actually maybe have more questions, I think. I don't have all the answers, and I'm certain not an expert in any of this. And when I came today and I saw Ever Lopez sitting here this morning, he reminded me just how far we have to go still to work. I think one of the questions was, well, what are we doing right? And then when I heard Viviana from the NC Dream team, and I see Kay stepping back there as well, I remember how much more that we need to do to help students who are deferred action students or underdocumented students. And there's a lot of great organizations that are helping those students. I'm just going to kind of name over a few, and you know who you are. One is the Latin American Women's Association, with Luisa, who spoke earlier. They're holding a parent workshop series, and tomorrow night, is it that you're going to award the scholarships, Luisa?
Next Thursday.
They're going to award 28 scholarships, and they're matching grants, dollar for dollar, with CPCC, the Liberty Community College, and also with UNC Charlotte, which takes me to Dr. Sam Lopez, who has the HCAP students who are from UNC Charlotte. There is, as well, Irene from Univision and her wonderful TV show that brings awareness to people. There's SAF, who provides wonderful outreach, and with Raul and the staff there. Faith Action International, the College Advising Corps, the Society of Hispanic Professionals, who do summits, and they do programs here in the fall at here at Durham Tech and over at the McKinnon Center in the spring. And one time at one of those summits, a student came up to my table and I said, what do you think of this summit? And she says, I didn't know that there were this many Latino students in North Carolina. There were about probably 700, 800 there that day. A lot of school systems are doing wonderful things. Ashford City School System is having another workshop series where they work with parents to increase their sense of self-efficacy. And many, many, many more. I feel like I've left many people out of this list. Cooperative Extension in Juntos. Myra Ed in Nash County. Many, many, many groups are doing excellent work across the state. But as we've said, as everyone has said, there's just not enough to be done. And there's more that we can do. And what are some of these things that we can do? I think working together to come up with something to just make the forms a little bit easier. I think that the applications and the forms are a huge barrier for students, and students can speak to this. Well, when you get to the question about with that, that's an opportunity that exists. You know, the policies are, and the cost. I mean, I think everyone has said that. I'm going to skip over that, but not because it's not very important. It's probably one of the essential fears that we all face in our work. Helping students and parents to have a sense of self-efficacy and to also see themselves as college students. I think it starts with inspiration. Quite often, I talk to counselors in elementary schools, and they're discouraged because they're letting the students aspire to do what maybe not professions that are not noble by any means, but professions that are tend to be blue collar work. And so, how can we work with students even at the younger age in elementary school to help see themselves in roles, as professionals here in North Carolina and beyond? How can we involve parents more? How can we connect parents to family resources? I think that's key. We meet with families so many times, and maybe we see that they're struggling. But are we helping them connect to resources outside of our own organizations that can help them? And how can we build that network to help parents be successful so that their child can also be successful? Also, I think it's very important to let parents know that they need to, like the lady who asked the question very first today, to let parents know that they need to tell the teachers what their expectations are for their child. Sometimes I think teachers make assumptions, or people make assumptions about the educational goals of a family without realizing talking to the family. And so that, again, is another very, very important thing. I have 1 minute left, so I want to say that it has been a pleasure these last 2 years to serve immigrant students and families in North Carolina, and I only wish that I could do more. I'm going to continue to work and to try to help you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? That's never been a problem before, but I want to offer that anyway. A couple of things I'd love to hear from. I'm going to target a couple of questions to a couple of panels so that we can do at least half an hour for Q&A and go back and forth. Does that work for everyone? When I was teaching, I was dealing with the first flood of the Hispanics. I mean, it was like you would have a celebration each time someone brought in a card, and I had this talk about a Honda. And one of the first things is that we realized is that very few had ever, we know that, worked in the mainstream economy, had access to internships, had thought about that. And all of a sudden, we turned our college into a hub for dress for success, career gear, and really integrating them into paid internship opportunities that they had never thought about before. So I throw that as strategy, that particularly for that group, was mind-changing. But it was mind-changing for the faculty who never thought that was their responsibility. And I say that because some of that was how did I shift culture as a peer to recognize this change. So that would be my story about what was strategy or tactic. And I went 2 ways. One was me as a peer, but one was also working with incredible young adults who recently received their status. I'd love to hear first from Mauricio, if you could talk a little bit about what were your parent engagement strategies. You started talking about them, but I guess if you could go a little deeper dive. And then after that, Mauricio, if we could actually have Dr. Gomez go a little bit into any supports that you've seen that have worked really well with DACA students that you may have dealt with. And then we'll have a couple of questions.
Sure. So when it comes to parent engagement, I think we got the loud mic here. It's about creating a toolbox, and I know that's like a cliche term, but it's true. I mean, our parents really need the know-how, and again, I know we're speaking to the choir on this. So what we specifically did, we engaged with NCNR, National Council of La Raza, for their Padres Comprometidos program. Now, I know there's no perfect program, or perfect curriculum out there, but we have to start somewhere. And it was I think it was a 12-week session. And even before we started, I was like, hey, there's no way you're gonna get parents come back 12 times. It's just really, really hard. So we shortened that particular curriculum into, I think, 6 sessions, and that was kind of pushing it, but really was a good idea to begin engaging the parents. Now we began by engaging the parents of the students that we already had. but that didn't always work out. So this particular group of high schools, high schoolers that we're working with, they are very passionate and they carry so many Latino values with them, but they're so independent at the same time. So yeah, so sometimes you go to a college and they bring hasta la abuelita to the admissions office, and here's a parade of 10 people, the whole family. But other times, when you really need a family engaged, it's like they show by themselves. So, because they're kind of, they're teenagers and they feel like really I it's kind of interesting. But for the parent engagement thing, we were able to engage a small number of parents, I have to say, in our first class. And parents really got engaged. Now, one thing that was striking was some of the students were telling us what to tell their parents. And I thought that was amazing. And we listened to that, and we had a student panel talking to parents. One of the things that I found out with our students as well, some of the students feel frustrated and at times angry to the parents for putting them into this situation. You know, again, we do a lot of talking with them about, look, your parents have made lots of sacrifices for you to be here, but then as a teenager, they see the world in a very different, with different lenses. And they feel frustrated because the parents don't have the tools to walk them through. So again, similar to what Constanza is doing, we were showing them what ACT means, but it was creating this sense of community. Other parents believing that they were not alone in this thing. We did some strategic things so they will become friends among others. We ended up with a carne asada and a picnic and things. So hopefully these parents are going to be, where they're here now, we're self-advocacy for themselves. So anyway, so we are, again, we started with NCNR, we tweak it, and it's working amazingly. I think I would encourage that if you do anything, certainly you have to engage the parents in whatever works in the particular community.
So we started seeing the first wave of DAPA students in the fall of 2013. Can you hear me? Is it working? Yeah. In the fall of 2013. And I have to say that I worked with the most amazing people. They're all sitting back there in the back. And every DAPA student comes through our office. Okay? Every DAPA student sees our International Student Services Director, even though they're not really considered international, but she has taken that upon herself, and she personally advises them how to register, how to get into the program that they want to get into, financial resources, scholarships, etc. So we have been very successful, I believe, in creating a one-stop shop, not just for Latinos, but also for our DAPA students.
This question's for both Donna and Alice. Considering the increase that we're seeing in the Latino population in North Carolina, what is a pressing policy issue that you should be advocating for locally, and one you should be very conscious of maybe being federal? Of course, I feel like immigration reform is probably, I feel like that is just such a key to the success for so very many people, including, just for our country. I will also talk about dual language programs in elementary schools. Sometimes we talk about the lack of ELL students' access to preschool. And I, as the parent of a child who is in a dual language program, I'm from Siler City, North Carolina, and my son is a 7th grader, and he started in a dual language program in kindergarten. And in kindergarten, in the dual language program, the day starts out when you spend 90% of your day speaking Spanish. And that's very difficult for the children who come from non-Spanish speaking homes. So the students who do come from Spanish speaking homes, some of them become kind of leaders in their class. And they develop, again, a sense of self-efficacy and a sense of leadership. And in 1st grade, the day shifts to a 50-50 split, 50% English, 50% Spanish. The students who were the first students in the program, they're going to be going to high school next year. And so there's always the question, is the middle school going to adopt the program? Is the high school going to adopt the program? And yes, the middle school has adopted it, and the high school has adopted it. And I see that in the research that's come out of Siler City Elementary is that the ELL students are exiting the program much faster than students who are not in dual language. So teaching them in Spanish is helping them learn English. So this is very interesting. And so how can we increase these types of programs here in North Carolina, especially in communities where there are large, and I see also, again, I go to the parent meetings and I see the parents coming because, again, they recognize that not only their language, but their culture is very important to the school system.
One things that I would really raise up that's happening in North Carolina is a recent legislation geared towards counselors, which says that counselors cannot proctor exams and they have to spend more of their time counseling. And that's a big step. And I alluded before the fact that a lot of times in our schools we kind of write off the counselors because one, they have very, very high caseloads. The national average is about 500 students to one. In some of our districts, it's 1,200 to one. So we tend to kind of just write off our counselors. And the other thing is that they, unfortunately, are in schools doing whatever the administrator is telling them to do, which is a lot of things not related to working with students. Unfortunately, they are, doing the bus lines and monitoring the lunchroom and serving as the registrar, a lot of administrative support tasks. So I think that that's one policy, just one baby step forward. But another is how we train our counselors. Right now, counselors who get a master's degree in school counseling get no college access advising training at all. We assume as parents that the counselors are the ones who are going to be able to do this with our students, and they're not trained to do this, unfortunately. So they're asked to learn it on the job, which is very difficult because of all these different things they have to do. One of the things, as I alluded to before, is they need more training in cultural competency, and particularly in working with Hispanic and Latino populations. Getting to know that student is of critical importance because they're coming from many, many different countries with many, many different cultural values, and they're not all the same. The other thing that people don't realize is when we bypass our counselors and working with our college access programs, which are fabulous programs, but unfortunately, these people who are working in our community-based organization programs do not have access to the things that counselors do, which is how the students are placed in what classes. And we start tracking our students into being college-bound versus non-college-bound in late elementary, early middle school ages. And the counselors are often the ones who can go work the system and advocate for the student to a teacher. No, this student needs to be in that AP class. So we're trying to better train our counselors to be advocates. Advocates in the school for creating a college-going culture and advocates for their students. So things that counselors need to know in working particularly with Hispanic populations is helping them get involved in more extracurricular activities. Again, going back to understanding the cultural competency in the home. Sometimes in Hispanic populations, they don't have a lot of time for being involved in these extracurricular activities. So counselors need to do more advocacy to reach out and engage students and families as opposed to waiting for them to come to visit them. And they need to be teaching parents how to navigate the system. Two more things I would say. A lot of times we are, I hear again and again and again when I work with students, we need more, I'm the one speaking for my parents and I have to explain everything to them. And I need more resources in Spanish. I need more resources in Spanish because over and over again. The problem is when I work with a lot of organizations, and I'm going to practice that policy, I'm all over the place, is that they say, well, I translated it into Spanish. Well, translation doesn't always work that way. You have to start with a native Spanish speaker and write it from the start. You can't just say you translated it because that doesn't work. And we need to be doing more in schools with specifically community liaisons to do these kinds of things to reach out to community. The other thing I would say on a policy level, unfortunately, well, this is not my unfortunate, but I work for SREB, the Southern Regional Education Board. We work with 16 states in the South. Unfortunately, in many of our southern states, we have very prohibitive state policies for access for Hispanic students and non-documented students. In many of our states, it used to be that, well, it was kind of this don't ask, don't tell. There are, non-documented, undocumented institutions that will help these students, and we can get you in no problem. Then policy shifted to, well, we're going to treat you like an international student. We're going to treat you like you're out of state. So you have
to pay out-of-state tuition, which for many of these families is, that's a complete barrier. There's no way that student's going to be able to go. Now we have shifted to, even if you pay out-of-state tuition, you cannot access this institution. If you are not documented, you cannot go to any state institution at all, period. So, that's a huge barrier for many students.
In-state tuition.
A few takeaways. If folks could start lining up for questions, that would be great for this panel. But there's a couple of takeaways that I want to highlight and release to them. I think highlighting the line, these are young adults, they're not children, they're in college. And respecting their agency and managing a family relationship too is very nuanced and requires enormous amounts of flexibility and delicacy. And so thank you for highlighting that, because it is respecting that piece of them as adults making choices. I appreciated your comments also about the integrated and across the administration. And that's such a powerful piece of the representation of the values. Now we're talking about it really closely around how do we understand and change people's perspectives on seeing the value of language as a way to culture, to a language. You and I share that. My son's in a dual language program as well. And it was very fascinating. People were like, well, he learned Spanish from you. I was like, not the way you can learn it in school, not the way you can learn it with chemistry, not the way you can learn it with other things. So we quite simpatico on that. And I want to say for you, thank you all for the work that you do also from the policy perspective, which is that inherently in the structure, we have counselors that we expect to be doing this. We're looking at parent deficiencies that are there. To understand that counselors aren't even aware of how to deal with the access and understanding that landscape says even that we're not preparing them best to do the work they need to do. So with that, can we thank our panelists as well?
Morning, I'm Matthew Drake, and I'm with the College Advising Corps. I'm curious as to whether you could elaborate on immigration reform and how that might change our current practices within the state.
Sure. So one of the things that Latino Americans does, we have a heavy emphasis on policy. So we have a policy department and we do research, and it's small, and nevertheless it's significant. I give you at the state level and at the national level. At the state level, I think momentum has begun to happen, and I think the conversation is it's a new day in Memphis, a new day in Tennessee, in North Carolina, throughout the Southeast. I think both sides are seeing this as all the benefits of particularly students accessing college. So it's just a very obvious. They are, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here. So we think that might not solve all the problems, but at least it's an entry point. And in policy, that's a really important thing. Deborah was talking to us yesterday. Just when the window opens just a little bit, we gotta jump in there. So at the state level, I think that our best bet is to seek immigration reform through in-state tuition or access. These things that we're talking. At the national level, I really believe that after these elections, something's going to happen. With all due respect, I don't think this administration wants to live with a legacy of this mark of so many deportations, and the other side doesn't want to take credit for that either. So I think people have made a calculated effort, and right after the election, I'm hopeful that something will happen, if for nothing else for political gains. But that's okay. When good policy marries good things, we're okay with that.
The one thing I would say, I mentioned the negative political climate in many of our southern states against undocumented students. One thing I can tell you that does work, that turns heads, that is effective, is working with the business community and the business roundtables in your state. When businesses come forward and tell the state legislatures, this is not working and our businesses are failing because of these prohibitive policies, that is what will turn heads and cause people to listen. So, if you're in some of these other states that don't have such great policies like North Carolina does, I think that's something that we all need to be working more with our business roundtables.
Next question.
Hi,
everyone. My name is Kenny Murillo, and I'm a student here at Durham Tech, and I'm also a member of the NC Dream Team, an undocumented youth and allied-led organization that started in 2010. Thank you all for being here. One of my comments is with Dr. Gomez, Ms. Connie, and since my experience here at Durham Tech has been really great. The support system, it's awesome being an undocumented student. Graduated in the top 10 of my class with honors, and then not having the opportunity to afford a 4-year college degree was horrible. It was literally like, I was depressed. I'll be honest with you, I cried. I wanted to, I didn't know what to do, right? Like I said, I did everything right in high school. I did everything right in middle school, and I thought, I don't have a Social Security, but that's not going to matter, because I'm a great candidate for a university. I'm going to go to a 4-year university. It doesn't matter that I'm undocumented, it doesn't matter that my parents are undocumented. But then I was sitting in the top 10 of my class, June 9th of 2012, and I was the only one who could not share with my friends what school I was going to go to. Because I wasn't going to go to a 4-year university, I wasn't going to go into a community college. I was going to go nowhere. And that was really hard for me and for my parents, and especially after working so hard, my teachers, they were sad. Like, I was just crying, like, this is like not happening. Like, how can this happen, right? And it was shocking. I thought I was gonna go back to Honduras. My dream is to go to medical school. I want to become a surgeon. And I've always thought about serving my community here in NC, in Durham. This is where I consider myself from. And I thought, well, since I can't go to medical school here and get my undergrad here in NC, I'm going to have to go back to Honduras. Although I haven't been there for like 10 years. The fraction happened, and I saw that as a sign that I should stay and put up the fight here. That's when I enrolled at Wake Tech. My experience there at being an undocumented student wasn't so pleasant. So I came to Durham Tech in the spring, and it was fantastic. It was phenomenal. Heidi White and Connie, they've been very, very helpful, keeping me updated with any changes or any giving me hope and really, like I said, like a support system. Right now, I'm 3 classes away from graduating with an Associate's in Science degree, working 3 jobs, and I work like at a tire shop, cleaning houses with my mom, doing yard work, and waiting tables for the past 2 years, and then also as an interpreter at a psychiatric hospital. Has been quite the experience while taking classes. Thankfully, I still hold it for 4.0 GPA, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping to transfer to NC State, but unfortunately, the out-of-state tuition rate, it's the barrier. That's the reason I cannot, go to NC State, because I can't afford $34,000 per year. $16,000 would be much more feasible. So that's why I asked, like, my state. It's like the opportunity to be able to afford it. Like my high school classmates, I've been living here for more than 10 years, and I pay taxes. My parents pay taxes, and it's awful that like now I have a Social Security number, which I thought before that was the reason I was paying out-of-state tuition, and I'm still paying out-of-state tuition. So it's just like something needs to happen. With that, I started to sell tamales for the past 2 months, every 2 weeks, with the help of my parents, my friends, and my community. We've been making 500, 600 tamales, and we sell them Saturday mornings. And this is all this for a college fund that will be used next year when I transfer to NC State. Everyone in the community, I'm telling you, it's been so great to me, and hear out my story, because it's not like I'm special. The thing is that I'm representing like over 33,000 students here in NC. So obviously that this is an issue that we need to focus on, and something needs to happen. Again, right now we just had a 4th event 2 weeks ago, and we've raised over 25% of the goal. And the goal is to raise $16,000, so I can offset the cost enough that I will pay $16,000, which is what I will pay if I was paying state tuition. We woke up this morning. We woke up like at 5 a.m. I was like, I need to bring some today. Like, you guys, if you want to try some, everything's donations, so whatever you would like to give. And the scholarship will be offered to other students as well. There will be a money taken aside for their students to apply, and yeah, so.
Don't forget us when you turn 60.
There are probably a couple of things I would say to the young man who just spoke, which I think is pretty powerful, is forming a coalition with other young adults around the country who have been successful in getting state tuition. That's important. This is not isolated. That's one. Two, crowdsourcing. If you ever want to fundraise for yourself or scholarship, do a crowdsourcing site. Three, Soros provides scholarships also, the Soros Foundation, for young adults who may not be documented. I'm just putting that out there because I always use the argument that the White House Initiative on Education Excellence for Hispanics is about all Hispanics. And it's not about a subset of Hispanics that may not have documentation. That is, of course, close and passionate to me. But anything we do for one group benefits the entire group, absolutely. Because what's scary is that what you're talking about, in New York City, we see the same challenges for third and fourth generation documented Latinos, right? Think about that. Think about that. So the supports that we're talking about here benefit every Latino student. We're framing it in a DACA framework, I get that, but they support every Latino student. So I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions, folks?
Can I just say something about Kenny really quick? So Kenny, amazing story, and I think two things that need to happen if I were you, and I don't know if it's Eli with Executive Spine or something. It's great that he talked to us. Kenny needs to be testifying in front of the Senate Subcommittee on Education. He needs to be that voice with the roundtables, because I mean, really, who is going to say no to this guy? I mean, so really elevate that voice, and I think we as an organization, we have a responsibility to create avenues to elevate that voice. And the second thing is, as much as I hate, it's so difficult to hear these stories over and over again, it is certainly by default creating a reliance and resilience in our community today in Ohio, right? Making us so much stronger, because I have no doubt that Kenny will be a surgeon. He's going to be running a hospital one day, and it's all because of these sacrifices. So again, as much as we hate to see this, it is certainly making our community very strong. So muchísimas felicidades.
Hello, my name is Ashley Taylor. I work in undergraduate admissions at Duke University. I also do Latino recruitment. So for my role in Latino recruitment and just trying to gather information that you all have, given the policies that we have now for DACA students and Dreamers, what are the most feasible and best options that you provide and how you guide families and students, and what can they do in order to afford college now, whether it be scholarships or working outside? But where do you guide your students, and what are the most successful options that you have seen so far?
John, can you take that one?
As much as I love the UNC system, I'm a graduate of UNC Greensboro. As much as I love community colleges, I worked for one for many years. I definitely think the private universities are able to help high-performing students. And when I mean high-performing, I mean students that are in the top 10 of their class, but those spaces are very, very limited. And many times there is still a gap, even up to $5,000. Even a $5,000 gap is sometimes insurmountable to many families, when even a $34,000 tuition. I think there are a lot of individuals out there helping students. I think we're finding little ways, whether they become ambassadors at their community college and they're given scholarships, but there's just not enough. There just needs to be more done to help that subgroup of students. And I wish I had more answers.
Can anyone else have particular strategies?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm obviously very supportive of a four-year degree. The more education, the better. But at the community college, we do have two-year programs that are, although they have to pay out of state tuition, they are shorter, and they are programs that will graduate students and they can go out and get jobs in the community. We have two-year respiratory technology program, an automotive program, you name computer program. And so those are some very valid options that are often overlooked. Not every student wants a four-year degree, and there is a need in the community for these professions. A lot of our students, a lot of our Latino students pursue those 2-year programs. Now, of course, giving concrete and specific and clear information is very important. Remaining optimistic is very important, but also we have to be realistic. A student can come and take 2 years for the nursing degree, but then when it comes time to take the state or national certification exam, they're going to reach another barrier. So as educators, advisors, we want a fine line between encouraging them, absolutely, absolutely, but also being realistic. And that's very hard for me because go for it, you'll make it, and they will. But we have to take baby steps, but 2-year programs are very doable.
Next question.
It's not a question. I want to contribute to the conversation. The question was asked, what else could we do to go ahead and assist students in getting them through? One of the things that we have been doing, sorry. Althea, you always get me. My name is Melody Rodriguez, and I direct the Hispanic Outreach and Leadership Program at Armstrong OLA, which has been serving the community in Savannah for 10 years. And for the past 2 years, I have been directing the project of Camino. It's college access, mentoring, information, and outreach, and it's one of the 13 sites that Lumina has founded with Latino student success. We are a multi-sector collaborative of 10 partner organizations, including Armstrong State University, where I'm located, Savannah State University, which is an HBCU, and Savannah Technical College. So we have the privilege of having an access institution and a 2-year component in our program so that we can strengthen the pipeline of transfer students into a 4-year setting, which we have 2 of in our partnership. One of the things that I have definitely noticed that has been instrumental in getting students through and avoiding some of these out-of-state tuition costs that they are incurring is considering things that are alternative in the school system, encouraging students to take AP, encouraging students to take IB, the International Baccalaureate, and the Advanced Placement Exams. And once they're in college, remember that we do have CLEP. We have a credit level examination that they can take. Most of our native Spanish speakers get those CLEP credits. They can take up to, or earn up to 12 credits. They can actually, they gain 9 with the entrance exam, Spanish 1, 2, and 3. And then in addition to that, they will have credit for 3 additional classes under an independent study. So they can do that with Spanish. But in addition to that, we have some very talented kids. I mean, we just had one prior to me in the microphone. I'm sure that they can go ahead and CLEP English, and they can CLEP biology, and they can CLEP chemistry. And those are some of the classes that we're not thinking about. And every class that they go ahead and exempt through a CLEP exam or through AP or IB, they are not paying in-state tuition, out-of-state tuition for. So those are things that we need to consider and continue to encourage students to take. For our adult population, also in-service credit and experience for learning, there's a lot of things that are being done right now to try to encourage credit attainment through those. So I just wanted to contribute that.
We have what's called Career and College Promise, and we've partnered with DPS, Field Public School System. And we have several models, but essentially they're all similar in that a student can be enrolled in high school and college at the same time, taking classes at Durham Tech Community College. And so they're earning college towards their high school graduation, but also towards college. Oscar, who was one of our student speakers, is in that program. And by the time he graduates from high school, he's going to have several, probably the first year completed of college. So that's something that we very much promote to our Latino community and our Latino students. Because again, it's free. While they're taking classes, college level classes here or through Durham Tech, as long as they're still high school students, it's free. And Patricia Gold is not here anymore, but she's our liaison. She does a wonderful job. Oh, there she is. And we've had an increase in the Latino applications that we are seeing for this next round.
Sylvia, our last question.
Thank you. Philip Garza again from South Texas City Public Schools. So the panel's devoted to access and supports. And in my mind, and in our experience with students in college, we see that there's a lot of variance in support, in quality support, and investment in support. And so I come to this question representing our students as consumers who are paying cash for college. And so my question to the panel is, what recommendations would you give the White House in making undergraduate institutions, graduate institutions more transparent about their success with persistence in graduation? And what is the White House doing? Because my cereal box tells me, as a consumer, how many carbohydrates I'm going to intake. If I'm going to spend $60,000 for my undergraduate degree, I'd love to know what I'm paying for.
So I have to start that one at speak with higher ed. One is that there has been, and it's been quite controversial. Oh, someone can. One thing that has happened, wow, I hear myself. One thing that is happening is this whole notion of a rating system. And people find that quite controversial, but I think that's thinking about who is a consumer, and that is the person who is paying for tuition. And people may not agree with what the outcome of that may be, but I think that's an important shift in frame. I'd say the second thing is that there's an enormous amount of disorientation happening right now in higher ed. Enormous amount. We didn't talk about that, but there's enormous change. And I know we talked about for-profit colleges and how abysmal their rates are. To be quite honest, most community colleges meet the for-profit college abysmal graduation rates. So I don't want to blame either